2 years ago, when I was a sophomore in high school, I started dating someone, Grayson. Our relationship was very explosive and toxic, but that's not what the story is primarily about. Grayson's dad always gave me the creeps. I believe in a way he was a pathological liar. Here's some background. Tim is really full of himself. He believes he's established his own business, thinks he's come up with innovative war tactics the government is using thanks to him. I also have reason to believe he was dishonorably discharged from the military. Grayson always told me that he left the Air Force to come home and be with his wife, but he doesn't have his uniform. He doesn't have any paperwork regarding this. However, leaving because your wife misses you isn't a valid excuse in the military. At first, it all seemed somewhat innocent, such as giving me and my mom his cell phone number in case we needed to be in touch. Grayson was always bad about ignoring texts from his dad in school, so I'd find him and tell him his dad was waiting outside for him. But it kind of got weird. He would go out of his way to text me and my mom for non-Grayson related matters. He would often invite me over when Grayson wasn't there, to do things such as Grayson's laundry or to bake cookies, or even to wait until he gets home to surprise him. My mom never let me, nor did I really want to go because I knew that this was weird. Any time Grayson and I were on the phone together, his dad would start saying some really mean things to him, yelling at him and calling him a retard, stupid, and the like. It always made me feel uncomfortable, because I'd come around and his dad would act very different. He started treating any time me and Grayson were together like we were playdates. Like we were on playdates, like we were just children. He would often remark about me being his stepdaughter to strangers. And man, this man could talk. He would talk to anyone and everyone, regardless if they seemed up to conversation or not. This made it really awkward for us, because Grayson would have his arm wrapped around me or we'd be affectionate, and him saying that would make things awkward for us. I remember trying to tell Grayson several times that his dad really freaked me out, and my parents were not happy about his dad either. He really didn't understand. He told me he had lost his daughter at birth, and that maybe him acting that way was his way of coping with it. Grayson's dad, Tim, had recently gotten close with a neighbor at the apartment complex. She had a daughter. Kelly was 6, maybe 7 years old. Her mom was a total deadbeat. Would only come around Tim whenever she needed money to get cigarettes or drugs, but she didn't hesitate to let Kelly spend several hours alone with Tim, or letting Tim pick her up from school. I remember one specific time that he brought Kelly along to pick Grayson up from my house. It was cold outside. He sent her to my door in pajamas. We had been watching a scary movie, and when she saw Grayson, she excitedly said, "Tim is taking me to see Moana." It was 11 p.m. It was really late, and I was extremely bewildered. Kelly eventually got taken away from her mother and was put into a foster home. Tim would try to get me or Grayson to go to the door and leave stuff for her to have from Tim. He then eventually tried to get custody of her, regardless of whether there was blood relation or any credentials that would allow him to do so. Another time around the Super Bowl, he had come up to the door with a beer bottle in hand. He doesn't even ask to come in. He just kind of forces the door open and comes into the bathroom to pee. He then takes Grayson, beer bottle in hand, and drives home. Here's a list of other weird things I remember happening, but it's been over a few years, so there's more, but I can't recall every detail. One time, Tim texted my mom and inquired about me and Grayson. We had been arguing in that period, and we argued quite a lot. His dad jokingly asked my mom, "Is she on her period?" I get it's a crude joke, and many guys joke about it, but imagine someone texting you and asking on your daughter's behalf. Another time, me and Grayson were giggling and making jokes in the back seat. I remember his dad always talking about me and Grayson getting married. I was a sophomore and he was just a freshman. We thought about it, yeah, but was it ideally going to happen? Not really. Grayson said something along the lines of, "Getting married? I don't think so." His dad then says, "Well, if you don't marry her, then I will." I was shocked that something like that would even be said. It was at that point that I was very weirded out. He had asked me to go out to Golden Corral with him and Grayson. I knew Grayson was at his mom's house, but for some reason, I thought he had already come home and was with his dad. I got into his dad's car. I was just in the car with him and two older men. They started furiously texting Grayson. I asked him where he was and if he was actually going. He was asleep. He didn't even know his dad had come to pick me up. His mom was pissed. She chewed his dad out on the phone while it was on the car speaker, and I was sitting behind his seat. She told him he needed to stop with his weird behavior. We go into the restaurant and I'm quiet, just waiting for Grayson to text me. I'm upset and confused. When he finally comes in, he was mortified. I wanted so badly to go home, but I didn't want to make a scene by leaving, so I tried to tolerate it. Our last and final argument ensued. It was because Grayson had started sexting girls. Grayson made it very clear he did not permit me to talk to other boys. I unadded every boy I had on social media, so this really distraught me after everything our relationship had been through. There were other signs that I ignored too, about how he'd surround himself with girls when I wasn't around, and how he'd touch other girls in his gym class. But this was the final and last time I wanted to be walked all over. I snitched on him to his dad. I didn't explicitly say that Grayson sexted girls since I didn't want him to be in legal trouble, but I did ask him to delete my number, and told him I wouldn't come around anymore. His dad told me I was being unreasonable, and that his son was a gentleman, that he raised his son well enough and his son wouldn't cheat. It was a lot more drama than I needed, so at the end of it all I blocked him on everything. Tim started trying to reach out to me through his Facebook account, through his business account. I often just blocked him and didn't tell my mom because it felt like old news. A few months ago I reached out to Grayson. Grayson had taken my virginity. I was embarrassed to tell him that I had an STI and that he needed to be checked. A week or two later I get a letter in the mail. His dad, Tim, decided to reach out to me. Keep in mind, me and Grayson had only talked about the STI stuff, nothing more, and we had been apart for more than 2 years at this point. I still lived at the same address. I suppose he had told his dad he needed testing done, and his dad took it upon himself to discipline me, now 18 years old. I'll retype a few of the things said on this card. The front line of the card said, "Which first? Pout or cry?" with a little girl in pigtails on the front pouting. Opening the card, it originally just says, "Miss you," but written all over the card was, "You're too smart for irresponsible behavior. Respect yourself and your body. Reach for the stars. Achieve your goals and get your education. Don't blow it now. Hang on, baby girl. If you need me, just call. If you need a ride or someone to talk to. Your friend, Tim." Hey dear, respect yourself. Don't throw yourself at boys. If a guy truly loves you, he'll hold on to you. There are many diseases out there. Some are incurable. Reserve sex for marriage and do right by God. Don't become a baby mama. You're smart, pretty nice, and sincere. So don't let the world change you. I wasn't the one to open the card. My mom was, as she recognized the name. She called the cops and had them investigate further. The cops themselves even remarked this behavior was strange and should be looked into. I don't really know all the details, as I was working when all of this went down. We still have the card on my mom's nightstand as evidence, just in case this were to go any further. His older brother, Tyler, works at a bar-type restaurant we frequent a lot. He and I don't really make small talk. We act like we don't know each other. But the way he looks at me, I can tell in a way he feels really sorry. I truly empathize with him because he too has a long-term girlfriend, and I can imagine his dad doing the same things to them. It's gotten so bad that one of his older sons, who has his first grandbabies, is moving away just to get away from him. His wife doesn't like Tim, and even he can see through the man his dad proclaims to be. I apologize if this is all scattered and doesn't really add up. It's been a while and I haven't really typed it all out. No one really talked to anyone about this other than my immediate family. I have other reasons to believe maybe Tim isn't mentally sound. He uses Catholicism to back up his reasoning for many things he does wrong in life. I think maybe the reason why our relationship failed was because Grayson's dad mistreated him so much. Going to his mom's house was an escape from that. I think that's why Grayson treated me how he did. It breaks my heart for him, but I'm glad I'm well out of that relationship. Well out of having to deal with his dad, and a brand new one with a family that adores me. Having to post this on my main account, which isn't ideal, but I want to tell this story, in case there are other people who may walk into something similar. Suffice it to say, this is all real, no exaggeration, and it happened just this afternoon. I was going for a job interview under the title of Marketing and Campaigns. A good salary, and they seemed great on their supposed site. From applying to getting an interview, it was around 2 working days max, so very quick. I'm a 5'4" woman in her early 20s, and I'm fairly attractive and in good shape. I feel this may matter for the context of the story. Today, I was walked to the interview place, and as soon as I got in, I had this feeling in my gut that something was not quite right. The offices were actually one small room where there was a reception corner desk, a tiny makeshift waiting area, and then the interviewer and candidate next to it. There was no privacy, and all the candidates could watch the other interviews. The place looked weird and barely furnished. There were branded purchase bags like Chanel and Pandora along the wall, and there were some vague printed accolades on the walls. The only staff there was a woman at reception and a woman interviewing, both attractive, young, and well-dressed. At this point I felt something was wrong, so I took a picture of the office and jokingly sent it to my group chat. To me, it seemed like an attempt to seem fresh, modern, and appealing to the young average woman. The interviews were only 15 minutes each, with no opportunities to ask questions. I watched the 2 girls go before me, both of which had nothing in common academically or experience-wise. To me, again, it felt weird for the position and salary. When it was my turn, I sat through a confusing 15 minutes of vague info on them wanting to grow us into senior management, and it sounding less and less like what I applied for. I was shown a sketchy-looking presentation on a MacBook, which, after it was on the last slide, was quickly turned away from me. In this presentation, they made big claims about who they had worked for, but no info on what they actually had done or what the role even was. They apparently were interviewing 45 women today, then shortlisting 5 for an intro day this coming Monday, where they'll decide to hire you on the day. I still made sure to give a good interview, but immediately knew I didn't want this job. Something just felt wrong. When I got out and had time to process it all, I realized the office I had been in, which had apparently been theirs for months, had no online paper trail and no signposting on the front to suggest that their company was there. I also looked at what I thought was their pretty nice and trendy site, but suddenly there was a new paid ad on Google under the supposed brand name I searched, but for a different MLM-style company with a different name, with a £250 joining fee. This site had poor English and barely worked. It was all super sketchy. The phone number they had given me was seemingly a dummy, as that number was for a totally different and unrelated company in the area. The woman I met had very common names, and when they emailed me about the interview, the boss I had met had a totally different name, despite it being her doing the emails. Also, the second lot of interviews on Monday they had mentioned in the interview, They gave no information on it, apart from that it would be from 11:30 a.m. to around 8:30 p.m. or later, and there would be 5 chosen candidates. I decided to call the police non-emergency number when I got home, and gave them as much info as I could. The guy on the other end of the desk took it very seriously, and explicitly told me to not attend anything else they invited me to, as this whole situation seemed strange. They're currently investigating. I got a call back an hour ago now from the company, congratulating me and inviting me back for the day on Monday. I asked them to send the info through so I could consider, and send a response after dinner with the family. In the email they sent, they say to go back to the office I was at today. There was no other staff there or space for a work environment, and to bring a warm coat to meet other clients. It was very hot in my part of the UK currently, and why would they introduce people who don't even have the job yet to their clients? If they had just moved there from London a few months ago, the need for a warm coat would still seem irrelevant, and it suggests you would be going to a different location. Something was seriously wrong. Part of me was tempted to go to film what happens if, at best, it was a scary 10-hour hard sell of an MLM. However, due to police advice, I politely declined their offer, citing my other genuine interview on Tuesday as my reasoning. I made a friends-only Facebook post about the situation, in case any of my local friends were applying for the same thing, and I'm otherwise trying to stay low on this on my public profiles. I think I just had a run-in with, at minimum, a very creepy MLM scam, or at worst some potential human trafficking. The town is near to one of the UK's biggest crossover points to France, meaning in a few hours you could be anywhere. I'm shaken, and my gut feeling is my best reminder that I may have escaped a very scary situation. Note: before uploading this, my local maid reached out, saying he had interviews with 2 different companies at the office in the past few months. The emails he had were signed off by the same HR manager, and the women were the same that I had met. He even had the same weird experience where they had loud music playing during the interviews. I can make a Google folder showing screenshots if people get curious. The rabbit hole is getting deeper. Update. Okay, so this got a ton of interest overnight, and reading through all the comments, I definitely agree that this could be a very nasty multi-level marketing scheme too. My bored butt decided to do some digging, and I found the office I was in was still up for let on a website. I'm going to call the estate agents asking what company they have there, and if the property is available for rent. I also found out the seeming creator of the company has declared bankruptcy a handful of times, and has liquidated previous companies. This company and its apparent umbrella companies are also taking the names of totally unrelated companies. I found a few people who have now been interviewed there, and none chose to go the further 10-hour day. But they recognized the office and said they found it creepy too. Me and a friend also dug through their initially flash site, and we realized all the videos were bad reposts of trendy indie artists and similar things. Even crazier, my pal managed to find reviews of those umbrella companies, only 2 5-star ones, by the exact same person. I got a missed call from the police today. They want to know more information as they're now investigating. They also asked me to call Trading Standards, too. I'll let you know what's happening once I get another call. A pal of mine scouted out the apparent second interviews area, and he said this is what he saw and heard. First off, just want to say congratulations for succeeding in the application process. So, have you got a phone with you? Okay, great. If you wouldn't mind putting it on silent first off. Okay, great. So we're going to be heading down to the other town by the sea today. They were walked off to a car in the nearby car park. 2 guys in fancy suits, like the money-saving guys in town, with one lady in a suit, not either from the office. Again, it seemed creepy, and why go to a town 30 minutes away for the trial day? Also, this town is nearer to the crossover town than it is to the place where the interviews took place. Freaky. In 2018, my boyfriend Jonathan and I moved into our first apartment together. We were so excited that we would have our own place and finally get to be adults. It didn't take long in our new apartment to spot the complex's resident weirdo. He lived in our building on the 3rd floor. We were on the 1st. He was in his late 50s or early 60s and had a face that seemed to lack all emotion. He drove an incredibly rusty old truck and would go outside to feed the wild cats in the area every day. He seemed harmless. Weird, but ultimately harmless. One day, Jonathan and I get home after work, and he's outside, standing beside his truck. His eyes are glued to us, and shivers run down my spine. Jonathan tells me that he doesn't want to get out of the car because he's freaked out. I don't want to let him know that I'm on edge too, so I reassure him that we're in the open, it's daylight, and nothing bad is going to happen. We get out of the car and I open the trunk to get my backpack, because I was planning on grading my students' vocabulary quizzes. When I close the trunk and look up, the creepy old man is right in front of me. His eyes were wide, as if he just saw something that unnerved him. I jump and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, you scared me. Is everything okay?" "No," he responds. "That woman that just moved into the 4th floor is such a bitch, right?" His voice reminds me of one I've heard before, but I couldn't put my finger on it. "Well, sir, I haven't actually met her. Is there—" "She called the office about these cats, and now they're going to call animal control on them." "Oh, wow, I'm so sorry." "Yeah, I just figured you guys would feel the same way. This place is a fucking hellhole, and they've gone to shit in the past year." He puts his hand up to his mouth, as if he's about to tell us a great secret. "I used to work for them, you know. I'd open and close up the pools and clean up a little bit around the property. They fired me a few months back, once they found out about my lifestyle." "They don't get our lifestyle," he says, moving his finger around to point at himself, Jonathan, and I. I assumed that he meant because we're gay men, but even now I'm not entirely sure. "Damn, that's pretty fucked up," Jonathan says, trying to edge his way closer to the apartment door. "Yeah, they're all just a bunch of cocksuckers, and I hope that new bitch hears that," he says. At this point, I realize what I've heard this voice before. He sounds like a discount Freddy Krueger. Jonathan says, "Well, I hope it's not too bad. I start working there on Monday." "Well, good luck. Try and keep your personal business quiet. Otherwise, you might be out of a job. Just don't turn into one of those assholes, or karma may come back to get you." The old man was chuckling to himself. Jonathan and I nervously laughed as well. "Well, good luck with the cats. We'll see you around, I guess," I say, putting my hand on Jonathan's lower back and lightly pushing him toward our apartment. "All right, guys. Nice talking to you," he said, still chuckling to himself, though it was more creepy than joyous. It reminded me of a villain from Batman, a maniacal laugh. A month passes and we see the old man occasionally. The cats were still there, so we figured things worked out for him. However, we hadn't had another conversation with him, thankfully. Jonathan managed to keep his job at the office, where there was not a trace of homophobia, and that's when he heard the news. "Evicted?" I asked Jonathan when he came back from work one day. "Why are they evicting him?" "Well, my boss says that the office receives harassing calls from him on a weekly basis. Even some other tenants have reported being harassed by him." "I mean, yeah, he's creepy, but is that enough to evict him?" "I guess so. They gave him a week to get all of his shit out and move." A week later, Jonathan was at the office, and the old man came in to return his keys. Jonathan was at the front desk, and had already phoned for the manager. The old man started whispering things under his breath. "Get out of here. They're fucking cocksuckers. All of them." The manager comes in and grabs the keys, and escorts the creepy old man out of the building. A week went by and we hadn't seen any trace of the old man. Jonathan and I are watching TV at around 12 a.m. one night when I hear a knock at the door. I pause the show thinking that it may be a neighbor complaining that our TV is too loud. I look through our peephole to see the creepy old man staring at me through the peephole. A smile covers his face, but it's unnatural. I've never seen a smile so big in my life, and it makes my whole body run cold. I start to stumble back from the door. Jonathan sees that I'm pale with fear. "Babe, what's wrong?" he whispers. "It's the old man," I whisper, tears welling up in my eyes. Jonathan gets off the couch and stands behind me. We're both facing the door. The man knocks again and it startles me back to reality. I start walking to the kitchen and I grab all the knives that I can. I tell Jonathan to go into the bathroom, which is the only room without a window, and call the police. I start to walk to the bathroom too, when I hear keys start jangling against our door. I look back to find that the security bolt was not folded against the door. This works like a hotel room security bolt, where someone can use a key to open the deadbolt, but as long as the security bolt is across the door, it won't open fully. I silently make my way over to the door, knife in hand, and slowly and as quietly as possible, fold the security bolt across the door. As soon as it touches the door, the old man bangs into it, making me jump back a bit and almost dropping the knife. Then it went quiet. No keys, no knocks, and no bangs. But I could hear whispering. "Come on, boys, let me in. It's just me. Come on, it's karma." If I wasn't utterly freaked out before, I am now. I run into the bathroom and close the door quietly, so he doesn't hear us moving around and know where we are. Jonathan has already gotten off the phone with the 911 operator, and she said the police were on their way. 5 minutes pass and it's still quiet, so Jonathan wants me to go check if the man is still there. I look through the peephole and don't see anything. I sigh with relief, but then I think to check the parking lot to see if his truck is there. I go to our guest room with a view of the parking lot and peer through the blinds. His truck is parked right next to my vehicle, and I see that he's in the driver's seat of his truck. He's staring right at me. I can't be 100% sure, but I felt as if we'd locked eyes. I didn't want to move out of fear that I'd be giving myself away, and the off chance that he wasn't actually looking at me. He opens his truck door and that breaks me from my stupefied state. I run back to the bathroom and tell Jonathan to lock the door. I fill him in on the information. About 3 minutes pass before we hear a banging on the door. "Shit," I say under my breath. But then we hear, "County police." I go and check the peephole, and it was an officer, so I open it and tell him what's going on. The officer said he saw the truck outside, but nobody was in it. He said he was going to look around the apartment and see what he could find. Jonathan and I continued to camp out in the bathroom. All of the lights in our apartment were off now. We waited to hear from the officer, but within 10 minutes we started to hear crazed screaming, almost demonic-like noises, hissing, coughing, screaming, and laughing. My heart drops, and I'm overcome with more fear than before. What the hell is going on? 5 minutes later, the police officer came to our door and said that he'd found the man in the vacant apartment directly above ours. When the officer got there, the man was standing, facing a corner and laughing under his breath. When the officer went to put the handcuffs on him, he began thrashing about, screaming and hissing. The officer told us that he had him in the cruiser and that they had arrested him on breaking and entering charges. When the police officer left, we checked the front of our door, where there were now dents from the man's keys. He struck our door with them after being unable to get in. The next day, we went upstairs with the manager of the apartment complex, and we saw a small hole in the floor of the bathroom in that apartment. Apparently, the man must have known that we were hiding in our bathroom. He was trying to get in there from the ceiling above us. Luckily, he didn't have any heavy-duty tools to do the trick. This hole was made by a screwdriver, being stabbed into the linoleum floor over and over again. Last year, my fiancé and my mom passed away, one right after the other. After they died, I obviously fell into a deep depression. Though I thought I was pulling off the whole "I'm fine" thing, my friends could all clearly see through it. A close friend almost demanded I move in with her and get out of the apartment I had shared with my fiancé for 10 years. She wanted me to start fresh, and while I didn't think I was ready to move on yet, the idea of not living alone was appealing. Plus, her apartment is in a much nicer neighborhood than the one I was currently living in, so of course I agreed. Living with her has been fantastic. Our schedules are basically the opposite, me on days and her on nights, so we both get some alone time, but we also have at least one day a week off together so we can hang out. Moving has also allowed me to be able to work as it's so close. I thought that would be a godsend, until my 10-minute walk caused a 2-month-long nightmare. I decided to sit in the park that's between my apartment and my job one evening after work. As I'm sitting there, a man approached me. I saw his face first. He was almost handsome, if not a little rough-looking. Even though I live in an urban area with a high homeless population, it didn't occur to me that this man was anything but a mildly handsome 40-something guy. So I smiled back and looked back down at my phone, expecting him to just walk on by me. Nope. He asked me what time it was. When I looked up to tell him, I noticed all of the stuff he was carrying. It was so random. A kid's chalkboard with nonsense written all over it, a paper bag full of old magazines and paperwork, and a steel shelf that at one point would have held CDs. I then noticed he wasn't wearing shoes, and his hands were filthy. Needless to say, it finally dawned on me that this was not going to be a normal encounter. He started talking non-stop. Some of it was nonsense, but some of it was coherent. All of it was fucking crazy. Of the parts I could follow, he told me that he had just been released from prison and he was looking for a tattoo shop because he wanted to get "Fuck the Doc," the Department of Corrections, and 34, the number of DOC violations he had while in prison, tattooed on him, and he wanted the DOC to pay for it. He then noticed a button I had on my bag that had the logo for a local gay bar on it. He told me he had gone there one night and went home with a guy. Then he looked me up and down and said, "But young ladies are my problem." I gathered my stuff and left immediately. Now I love this apartment, but it has its drawbacks which became glaringly obvious after this encounter. The apartment is on the first floor. I love it because you can walk out the sliding glass doors, one in the living room and one in my bedroom, right onto an awesome gated patio that has tables and grills for barbecuing, so it's pretty awesome in the summer. I now hate it because it's right on the street, and the fencing is clearly very easy to scale. One very early morning at around 5 a.m. in the morning, I hear a man scream, "What the fuck are you doing?" So loud and so close, it woke me up from a dead sleep. I legitimately thought it was coming from inside my bedroom. As it turned out, it was coming from outside. A neighbor had been leaving for work and discovered a man, the man from the park, sleeping against my sliding glass door. The dude got scared off, and my neighbor checked on me. Once I calmed down, I chalked it up to a fucked up coincidence. 2 weeks later, I was sleeping, and at some point, this man came onto the patio, was now tapping on my sliding glass door. I honestly just laid there, frozen in fear, until he escalated to full-blown kicks against the glass. I turned the light on to grab my phone, and he took off as fast as he could. I called the police, and they came over to take the report, and took a look at footage from the cameras inside the building. The footage confirmed it was the man from the park, and more disturbingly, the footage from the hallway camera showed that on more than one occasion, he had slipped in the building behind a resident and sat in the lobby for several hours. At one point, he was going down the hallway and trying my doorknob and my neighbor's doorknobs to see if they were locked. He even went so far as to hide in the little mailbox room when he saw my roommate coming in from work. The police think either he followed me home from the park or just happened to notice me at some point when I was on the patio. It's been a few weeks and I haven't seen him, and no one has reported seeing him in or around the building. My roommate bought me some pepper spray, and my kind of kooky, albeit well-meaning neighbor, who has made it very clear he's a retired military and a bit of a gun nut, checks on me nightly, so I'm not as freaked out as I could be. But still, crazy fucking guy from the park? Let's never meet again.